So we are still on the first pasuk of Parshas Emor. We only did the first Rashi, but now we say we're continuing with the Rashis on the first pasuk. It says, Hashem told Moshe, say to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, not to become tamei by contacting a dead body. So says Rashi, B'nei Aaron v'lo b'nos Aaron, that the prohibition of becoming contact with a dead body only applies to the sons of Aaron, but not to the daughters of Aaron. There's no prohibition for a female Koheneth of coming in contact with a dead body. She's allowed to come in contact with the dead body. And now it states in the Rashi comments, Lo yitamei ba'amav, that he's not allowed to come in contact with the dead body amongst his people. Rashi says, Ba'od shahameis b'toch hamav, as long as the dead person is still amongst his people, then he's not allowed to become tamei. Yatsa meis mitzvah. This excludes if the person was what's called a meit mitzvah. A meit mitzvah is a dead body who nobody, Rahman al-Atzlan, is attending to. There's nobody who's attending to this dead body. So therefore, even the Kohen, even if he's the Kohen Gadol traveling to serve in the temple on Yom Kippur, and he sees a dead body lying on the side of the road, and nobody's attending to that, so then even the Kohen Gadol must become tamei for the dead body if it's what's called a meit mitzvah, an unattended dead body. Good evening, my dear friends. Great to see you. So then now we're up to the second pasuk of Parshat Emor, chapter 21, verse 2. Who is the Kohen allowed to become tamei for? We're talking about a regular Kohen. Ki im l'sheiro hakarov elav, only to the relative who is close to him, i.e., le'imo u'aviv v'livno u'vito l'achiv. He's only allowed to become tamei to the relative who is close to him, and Rashi will tell us who that relative is, and also to his mother, to his father, to his son, and to his daughter, and to his brother. Who is the relative? Kim l'sheiro. Rashi says that refers to his wife. Ein she'ero ela ishto. The word she'ero means his wife. So he's only allowed to become tamei for, so far we've said 6 relatives: his wife, his mother, his father, his son, his daughter, and his brother. And we're about to see the 7th relative who the Kohen is allowed to become tamei for. Rashi, then the next pasuk states, Vila achoto habetula hakrova alav, to his unmarried sister, the one who is a betula, she's still a virgin, who is a relative of his, asher lo haita la'ish, she never was with the man, la yitama, he is required to become tamei for her. If she's married, he does not become tamei for her. Only if she's unmarried can he go in the proximity. If she's married, you're asking for the reason for the mitzvah? Well, the Torah doesn't tell us the reason for the mitzvah, but presumably it's because when she's married, she's not part of his family. She's part of her husband's family. So therefore, he's not as responsible for her. He's not as close to her. It's her husband's responsibility. That's presumably the reason. It doesn't say it explicitly. But why does it say hakrova? Means the rabot etarusav. She's still just betrothed, but not fully married. You grab a chumash, my dear friends, Greg and Moshe. So if she's not fully married, then she's just betrothed, then he does become tamei. And Rashi says, Asher lo haita ish lo yitama mitzvah. It's an obligation for him to become tamei for her. He's required to go to her levaya, required to be present there. Yes, Jerry, you had a question.
Yes. What about aunts and uncles? Why were they excluded?
Anybody want to see what that is?
Oh, I know, he's working on the door.
So uncles and aunts are not considered close enough relatives for him to become tamei. It's just that simple. The Torah tells us who's close enough. Yeah, so basically it's just those 7 relatives. Anybody else is not able to become tamei for them. And you have to be careful. So sometimes I see people and they want to go to the Levaya, but they're Kohen, but it's like their grandfather, not allowed. It's only one of the 7 relatives. If it's not that, it's not part of the 7 relatives. You're not allowed to do it. Not allowed to do it.
So if the Kohen has a grandson, he's not allowed to become Tomei for the grandson, correct?
Or vice versa. The grandson cannot become tamei for the grandfather.
Well, what about the answer to my question? Can a Kohen become Tomei for his grandson?
No,
Okay, thank you.
no. So now, the next pasuk states, "Lo yitamei baal ba'amav lahechalo." So this literally translates as, and we'll have to see what this means, a Baal cannot become tamei amongst his people to defile him. Baal is a husband. So what is this a reference to? This seems opaque, an opaque pasuk. We need Rashi to explain to us what it means. Rashi tells us the following. Says the Holy Rashi, it means lo yitama ve'ishto psula shehu mechulal ba ba'odo imo. That if, let's say, a Kohen was married to a woman who he was not allowed to marry, there are certain women who a Kohen is not allowed to marry, and through that woman he is defiled, and then she dies, so then he is not allowed to go to her funeral. So let's read the verse and with this reading in mind. Lo yitama, he's not allowed to become tamei for Baal Ba'amav Lahechalo. So Rashi is saying he's not allowed to become tamei for a woman who was disqualified to him, Shehu Mechulal Baal Ba'oda Imo, that while he's still married to her, he's defiled and prohibited from performing the avoda in the temple. He has to divorce her, or he has to swear that he's never going to be with her again. So if such a woman dies, he can't go to her funeral. Even though while she was alive, he was excluded from service in the temple, now that she's dead, he can't go to her funeral. But Bishero, Ba'od Shehi B'toch Amav, Sheyesh La Kovrin, meaning to say, when can he not bury her? As long as that there are people who are close enough who can bury her. She'ena meit mitzvah, then she's not a abandoned dead body. Ube'eze she'er amarti, and which one am I talking about? Ba'ota shehi lehechalo, the one whom will defile him. V'tchalel hu mikunato, the one who defiles him. A woman who is not allowed to marry defiles him from at that point service in the temple while he's still married to her. There was a story one of my professors at Yeshiva University told me about a very, very famous professor of classics of ancient Jewish history. And he was an expert on Josephus, and he was also very nice to me when I was a student. He had gone to MTA, and he was the valedictorian of MTA the year Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein graduated. This guy got the Talmud Award. So he was no slouch, and he became the professor at Harvard of ancient Jewish history, a real scholar. But he was not he was, like a lot of these professors, he wasn't necessarily the most, he wasn't a rabbi, let's just say like that. Not that rabbis are be all and end all, but he wasn't, he didn't hold himself out as an Orthodox Jew or as a full believer. Anyway, so my professor told me that he was sitting next to him in the synagogue one time in Yale, and they came over to offer him the Kohen Aliyah. His name was Kohen, his father was a Kohen, and they tried to give him the Aliyah. So he said to the Gabbai, the Shulchan Aruch says that if a Kohen is married to a woman who's divorced, you're not allowed to give him an aliyah. So I can't take the aliyah, the Kohen aliyah. I can't get the Kohen aliyah. So he turned it down. But now he turned it down. He taught them the halacha. So next pasuk. Lo yikrachu karcha birosham. Upath zikanam lo yigalechu. Uviv saram lo yisritu sarates. So you're not allowed to make a bald spot on their heads, and the corners of their beards they cannot shave. Uviv saram, and on their flesh they cannot make a mark. Okay, what is this a reference to? What are we talking about here? It seems kind of random, like we went there fast. Well, you're not allowed to make a bald spot on their heads. Who's making a bald spot? The corners of their beards they can't shave, and their flesh they cannot make marks. So what's this a reference to? Let's see what Rashi says. Rashi says al mace, as a sign of mourning. Gemara says, but the Jewish people are also warned about this. So why do we need one prohibition for the Jewish people and one for the Kohanim? So because it says be Israel, Rashi says, because by the Jewish people it says between your eyes. Yacho, I might think, well, yeah, chayev al kol harosh. I might think he's not liable for anywhere else on the head. He's only liable for between the eyes. So therefore, for that reason, it says birosham, on their heads. V'yilamdu Yisrael mikohanim b'gzeira shava. Basically, so it's to teach us that it's the whole head, not just between the eyes. So if that's the case, but still, seems kind of random, even though we're not obviously arguing with the rabbinic interpretation, but it seems like we need more. The rabbinic interpretation saying that you're prohibited from making a bald spot in response to the dead anywhere on your head. But it must be the case, this is presumably a Maimonidean type of explanation, that's what the ancient priests used to do. The ancient priests used to make these types of bald spots on their heads in response to mourning. They would pull out their hair, they would gash themselves as a sign of mourning. And so therefore, specifically, our Kohanim needed to make this point that they're not allowed to do that. Yes, Elon. Not that Elon, this Elon.
In Egyptology, it's very clear, and even from religious and popular, that Egyptian priests were literally involved in death. Like they were the ones who would prepare and embalm bodies. And you could see the Torah's response as sort of a
keep them away.
So yeah,
very nice.
A polemic response to that in our priesthood.
Very nice.
Our priesthood to not
very nice.
As far from it as possible.
Yasher koach. And speaking of Yasher koach, also, Eliezer, did you come here and you fixed our?
I put a handle on it. No, I didn't realize what the problem really was. So I fixed something else.
What'd you fix?
Put a handle on it.
But does that solve the problem?
No, but it helps a little.
That's, first of all, thank you. Second of all, that reminds me of the joke. My favorite joke. The guy is looking for he's looking under a lamppost. He says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm looking." "Why are you looking under the lamppost?" He goes, "Because I dropped a dollar." So the other guy says, "Well, if you dropped $1, tell me where you dropped it." He goes, "Oh, I dropped it 2 blocks away." So he says, "So why are you looking here?" He says, "Well, this is where the light is." So that's the what?
Must take place in.
No, but that's just like you can't do it there, so you do it here. So we had a handle, so we put the handle on. Yeah. Well, anyway, Jerry, you had a question, my friend.
Yes, a moment ago, one of your students made a comment that you liked. Would you mind repeating it?
Oh yeah, our student. This was Elon, and Elon pointed out that according to a lot of Egyptian studies, which shows that they had a death cult, that there was a lot of attention paid to their priests, taking care of the dead in a cult-like fashion. And it seems like the Torah's distancing of the Kohanim from the dead is a response to that, perhaps a polemical response. Okay, so the next, and again here also, they can't shave the corners of their beard, which is also quite possibly a response to what was going on, not only in Egypt, but also in the ancient world. And even today, if you look at some the Middle Eastern countries, when they are mourning, they rip their hair out. So here we're saying that they can't shave off the corners of their beard. So Rashi points out here, Lefishin, and we had this recently in the Daf Yomi as well, in Kedushin. Lefishin Emor B'Yisrael, it says by the Jewish people, Lo Tashlit, that you can't destroy the corner. Did you have another question, Jerry?
Yes, would you, using your face, would you point out what does corners of the beard mean?
So the problem is that, let me read this Rashi and then I'll explain it a little bit more. So let me read the Rashi and then I'll explain it. So the Rashi says, it says lo tashlit by a regular prohibition. A regular Jew is prohibited to not destroy the corners. I might think that it b'malaki to ritani. I might think he could cut it out with like a plane. Yeah, therefore it states lo yigalechu. You can't shave it. You're only liable for something that's called shaving. And there's destruction, and that's a razor. So we see two things. It needs to be done with a razor. It has to be shaving and destroying. And also it's the corners of the beard. So there's two problems with this. We don't know exactly what a razor is. It's hard to know, but there's a lot of discussion about it. And also we don't know what the corners of the beard are. We don't know exactly, say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's usually what they say, but we don't know exactly where those spots are. So therefore, for this reason, there's the practice that a man does not shave his anywhere on his head, even on the back of his head, like over here, should not shave with a razor. That's the normative practice. A man should not use a razor. What about electric shaver? And so some people are very strict about this. They don't shave at all. Like you'll see a Chabad rabbi will never shave, but some say we could do with like an electric shaver, but you have to be careful which one. Or some will use like a cream, or maybe hot wax. Go for a nice wax.
Why?
We just said this is a prohibition.
No, but why variance? What is
It's only prohibited to be doing it with a razor. Scissors would be okay. So, and Bib Saram will use for 2 saratas, and on their flesh, they can't make scratches. This is like they used to make these types of scratches on their flesh. Again, in response to mourning. So also by a Jewish person, it says the ser nefesh lo titnu. You should not make in your flesh a scratch. Yachol saret chamesh sritos lo yachayev el achas. I might think if you made 5 scratches, let's see like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I might think you're only liable once. It says lo yisuru tu sarata. So for each and every one, you're liable. So you have to bring a separate set of lashes for each one, or separate sin offering for each one.
We're just talking about a clothing, right?
Well, but it's also a response to every Jew in response to a debt. So these 2 prohibitions are by Jews and by Kohanim and all Jews, that in response to a dead, they can't make these marks and they can't pull out the corners of their head or make bald spots. So Rashi's explaining each time why it has to say it also by a regular Jew and also by a Kohen, and he's been giving the answers each time. Now it states, Kedoshim Yiyu Eloheim. The Kohen has to be holy. Now we already said every Jew has to be holy. So why repeat it? V'lo yichalu shem Eloheim. They can't desecrate the name of their God. Ki asishei Hashem. The fire offerings of God, lechem Eloheim. The food of God, heim makrivim. They're the ones bringing that vayu kodesh. And they have to be holy. So Rashi says, Kedoshim Yiyu, they shall be holy. Al karcham, against their will, yaktishum beitim bekach. The court shall sanctify them in this matter. So, by the way, I want to just say something I learned today. this is not on the topic, but hey, this, what was the name of this woman who was so brave and courageous, and she represented Israel in the Eurovision? Eden Golan. So she was very brave, very courageous, very special person. And she was under such vicious anti-Semitism, and even from the other Eurovision participants. And the one who really attacked her the most of the Eurovision participants is the Irish one, whose name was, what's their name? Their name is Bambi Thug. They're they, and they identify as they, and they took the name upon themselves as Bambi Thug. Now, here's the irony. Who's Bambi? What do we know about Bambi?
Innocent, lovely little deer.
Okay, Bambi is a Disney movie, but the Disney movie,
It was based on a story written by a Jewish writer, yes.
not only a story written by a Jewish writer, a story written by a Jewish writer who was a very close friend of Theodor Herzl, who was a Zionist, and wrote Bambi as a Zionist, as a metaphor for the Jews in exile and by why they need to go to their own homeland. The name Bambi is a Zionist, Bambi's a Zionist, basically. Bambi is written as a Zionist metaphor. The deer is shot by the hunters. It's not even a question. Like it's the point of the book. And this vicious anti-Semite, anti-Zionist doesn't even realize how much of an idiot they are that they take the name Bambi while they're criticizing the Zionist entity. That's like the height of irony.
Yes. All these protesters, they're on their cell phones with software from Israel.
Right, well, they're all using the Israel technology. But just so everybody knows, Bambi, before Walt Disney made a movie, was a book about the need for Israel to have a homeland, about how Israel is not safe and is being persecuted. Look it up. Don't take my word for it. Look it up.
An allegory, you'd say, right?
That's the point of the book.
I read a book about, I don't remember the author, but I read a book about, so yeah, about.
You can look it up in 2 seconds on Wikipedia and you'll see this idea. So what?
Who wrote the book Bambi and what it's about?
You just look up Bambi, the book, Wikipedia, and you'll see it right there. So anyway, that's our history lesson for today. So one more Zionist, one more fail of the anti-Zionists.
Doesn't Palestine mean land of the Philistines?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know how they got the name.
Him.
Yeah,
I don't know.
well, that's what I'm reading online lately.
I don't know.
So the Romans had,
The Romans.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Now up to the next verse. Anyway, Dan, you could ask your brother Gil to write the op-ed about that.
Soul Singers written a book. Yes, it's by Sandy and Dice, trying to remember.
Oh, there we go. So he wrote the book. Soul Singing. But it's not even before Soul. It was obvious. The guy who wrote it was friends with Herzl. It's just so frustrating sometimes. All right, so we'll do one more pasuk. Isha zona v'chala lo yikachu. So now we're talking about who the Kohen is not allowed to marry. A Kohen is not allowed to marry a woman who's a zona, a chalala, lo yikachu. He cannot marry such a woman. V'isha grusha meisha, or a woman who was divorced from her husband, lo yikachu. He cannot take her as his wife. Because he is holy to God. What's a isha zona? What is a zona? Now, zona is typically translated as a harlot, but that's not what it means here. It means shenivala bilat Yisrael ha'asurla. She had basically relations with anybody who's prohibited for her to ever marry. So, who is such an example? Kigon chayve krisus o natin o mamzer. She had relations with a krisus, natin, or mamzer. So basically, Rashi says here, "Shenivalat bilat Yisrael," with the Jew, but really it's if she had relations even with a non-Jew. If the woman has ever had relations with a non-Jew, she's not allowed to marry the Kohen. If the Kohen marries her, and the offspring are not kahuna. So this is, it's not so pleasant to talk about, but this is like one of the Terim that, let's say somebody's a Baal Teshuvah and he's a Kohen and he falls in love with a woman who's let's say divorced, and now we're talking about love. So then we start looking for reasons maybe he's not a Kohen. So if he was a Baal Teshuvah, and maybe his parents weren't religious, maybe his mother had a non-Jewish boyfriend. So these are some of the ways we have to be lenient on such a case. But anyway, let us daven mincha at this time. But I want to just say one thing. What?